question tonight. Did Tim Scott just become the VP favorite for Donald Trump? Well, that's because another contender, Kristi Noem, just ticked off quite a lot of Americans.
All right, look, here's the backstory. South Dakota governor is releasing a new book, you may have heard, and The Guardian got its hands on a copy. And the outlet is now flagging a section in which she describes killing her puppy.
Killing her puppy?
A puppy named Cricket.
Honestly, the easiest way to describe this is just, frankly, to read the main part of the article to you. It says, Cricket was a wire hair pointer about 14 months old, she says, adding that the dog, a female, had an aggressive personality and needed to be trained to be used for hunting pheasant.
Now, she includes her story about this ill-fated Cricket, by the way, and she says to illustrate her willingness in politics as well as in South Dakota life, apparently, to do anything difficult, messy, and ugly if it simply needs to be done. By taking Cricket on a pheasant hunt with older dogs, Noem says, she hoped to calm the young dog down and begin to teach her how to behave.
Now, unfortunately, Cricket ruined the hunt, she says, going, quote, out of her mind with excitement, chasing all those birds and having the time of her life. Noem describes calling Cricket, then using an electronic collar to attempt to bring her under control. Nothing worked. Then, on the way home after the hunt, as Noem stopped to talk to a local family, Cricket escaped Noem's truck and then attacked that family's chickens. Quote, grabbing one chicken at a time, crunching it to death with one bite, then dropping it to attack another.
Now, Cricket, the untrainable dog, Noem writes, behaved like, quote, a trained assassin. Now, when Noem finally grabbed Cricket, she says, the dog whipped around to bite me. Then, as the chicken's owner wept, this is real, everyone, Noem repeatedly apologized, wrote the shocked family a check, quote, for the price they asked, and helped them dispose of the carcasses littering the scene of the crime.
Now, through it all, Noem says that Cricket was the picture of pure joy. I hated that dog, Noem writes.
I hated that dog, Noem writes.
Adding that Cricket had proved herself, quote, to be untrainable, dangerous to anyone that she came into contact with, and less than worthless as a hunting dog.
Now, at that moment, Noem says, I realized I had to put her down. Noem, who also represents her state in Congress for 8 years, got her gun, then led Cricket to a gravel pit. Here's what she writes. It was not a pleasant job, she writes, but it had to be done. And after it was over, I realized another unpleasant job needed to be done. Incredibly, the tale of slaughter is actually not finished at this point.
Her family, she writes, also owned a male goat. Now, the male goat was nasty and mean because it had not been castrated. Furthermore, the goat smelled disgusting, musty, and rancid, as I guess goats would.
I mean, it's a goat, but okay.
But that's another story, because it and it loved to chase Noem's children, knocking them down and ruining their clothes.
So, okay. So she decided to.
This is real.
This is real. So she decided to kill the unnamed goat the same way she had just killed Cricket the dog, but thought she dragged him to. But though she dragged him to a gravel pit, the goat jumped as she shot and therefore survived the wound. Now, this is a page turner. So Noem says she went back to her truck, retrieved another shell, then, quote, hurried back to the gravel pit and put him down. Now, at that point, she writes, she realized a construction crew had watched her kill both animals, and the startled workers quickly got back to work, she writes, only for a school bus to arrive and drop off Noem's children. She writes, Kennedy looked around confused, Noem writes to her daughter, who asked, hey, where's Cricket?
It's pretty awful as someone who lost a dog.
But she wrote this in her book.
As a child, honestly, it's really traumatic. And if you're thinking, wait, there's no way that this could possibly be true, well, Noem defended the scenes in that book in a statement. She says she loves animals, but tough decisions happen all the time on a farm. In fact, she says they recently put down 3 horses.
Well, joining us now is dog trainer Zach George, host of Zach George's Dog Training Revolution. I love that. Well, listen, I wonder from your perspective, when you hear that this 14-month-old wire-haired pointer, beautiful dogs, by the way, was out of her mind with excitement, chasing birds on a hunt, attacking chickens, I wonder what you've made of that.
The behavior described here is very typical adolescent behavior out of a dog that's been selectively bred to have endless stamina and endurance. And it really speaks to the fact that the general public is deeply confused about dog behavior and how to treat them.
And she says that she put the dog around other older dogs in a hunting setting to teach her how to behave. She talks about using an electronic collar, but then at the same time, she calls the dog untrainable. I mean, when you hear that, I mean, do you get the sense that she really tried her level best to actually train this dog?
I don't know what her personal best would be, but yeah, there are many more appropriate ways to train dogs than that, especially with electric collars and aversive methods like this that rely on pain, fear, and intimidation. Those are strongly correlated with increased aggression in dogs. Now, many members of the public don't realize that. That's one of the big problems, that collars like electric collars and prong collars and choke chains are used aggressively to suppress behavior. But one of the things we're trying to raise awareness about is the fact that there are so many side effects, and there's nothing that can't be trained with positive reinforcement.
Just to bring it here into the room, look, she had a hunting dog that has a prey instinct. That's what these dogs do. They're bred to do that. Philippe, your reaction to just I cannot believe that this is actually an anecdote that she thought reflected well on her.
I mean, watching everyone's faces while that was on, I mean, everyone's blood is boiling. I am one of these people that not only loves animals and has always had pets, but just prefers them to people. We don't deserve them. That she thought that was a good idea. I mean, there's a special circle of hell that's reserved for people who mistreat animals. It's a real window into it. As I was leaving, I bumped into my neighbor and his dog, Georgie. Georgie doesn't really like me because he associates me with my two cats. But I jokingly said, Georgie, I'm gonna go on TV and I'm gonna defend your honor. And my neighbor said, do you think she said that because she doesn't want to be VP? Like, his initial reaction was, how stupid can you be? And, on a political basis, there's not a whole lot that keeps us all together. In fact, there's really nothing. Like, most of America can't agree that today is Friday. Pets and animals, one of them. I mean, I looked up the numbers. 86 million households, that's 2 out of every 3 have a dog or a cat. What makes her think that this is a good idea? And what I love about this, and I'll wrap, is that Republicans love to yell at people like me and Democrats that we don't get America. We're living in a bubble. We like our kale, we like our DEI, we like all these things that we just don't get what goes on between the coasts. What America is she living in where people think that it's a good idea to talk about, to do what she did, just walk around killing goats because they smell, I mean, as if goats don't smell, and to kill puppies because they bother her. This is someone who thinks they're in touch, and what's most pathetic about this is that Donald Trump won't care. You know why? Donald Trump's the only president in American history, from what I could tell, that has never owned a pet.
I grew up in Middletown, Connecticut. We lived on a 100-acre farm. So I lived around horses and cows and dogs and cats. And all I can say is this, that is sick. That is sick.
He got a ton
She
of grief
just
for
committed
that.
suicide as a VP candidate. She will never be the VP candidate.
And the other part of this that is hard to swallow is the way she flippantly mentions her child showing up and finding the dog gone. It's wild. If you have a kid, I would never do that to my child. It's just
You got to wonder why she put that in there if there's 10 other things that she thought she would get this out there.
Yes.
Like she's shooting elephants
Well, I
with
have
Don
to say,
Jr. or something.
No, I think there's an element here where she thought this made her look masculine. I've seen
Yes.
women who are on the Republican side pick up guns, talk about hunting more than they do. Okay, I grew up in Southern West Virginia. I'm comfortable around those things, but they overstate it or they overdo it as a way to sort of take up that banner of
makes her
masculinity. And
look
she doesn't think it's going to work
sociopathic.
against her by
Well,
that.
There's a difference between hunting and execution. This to me is a character flaw.
Of course there is.
Well, I have to say something before we go. My dog Hershey's better than all your dogs.